Hello, I'm reading from Play the Man. We're on to chapter 4 and this is entitled The Bud. I know women have to submit to their husbands, for God has placed the man in the position of being in authority over the entire household. But how can a man help his wife to submit so that he earns her respect rather than beating her into submission, which will cause her to despise him? I've searched my heart and tried to give an honest appraisal of the ways in which Morris has either helped or hindered me in my desire to please God and be an obedient and loving wife. I don't think I could have handled marriage if I had wed at a young age, as I was a product of my environment and had turned out to be rebellious, headstrong, arrogant, and a very insecure person who could not accept any kind of authority. My parents, who had not had any good role models to emulate, had not prepared me for marriage. God had to do that. And it took a long time to knock out the wrong attitudes and replace them with the right ones. It's not been easy for either Morris or myself, but God was very gracious and allowed us 22 years of friendship before our marriage to enable us to gain some understanding of each other. But that's okay. God has all our days numbered and knows how long we've been allotted to fulfill the task He's given us to do. Permit me to say from the outset that there is no reason in this modern generation why any woman would want to be a submissive, obedient wife. We're living in a day and age when everyone has equal rights and opportunities. Actually, women have more rights than men at present because the pendulum has swung from one extreme to the other. And by giving women rights, it only follows that some of the rights that men once had have been taken away. Women can vote, occupy seats in Parliament, and even run countries. Bosses are not allowed to discriminate against women in businesses. And if a woman is capable of doing the same job as a man, whether it be bricklaying or plumbing, then a boss has no right to refuse her employment. Our society has gone mad and brought about a reversal in roles. No longer is a woman expected to stay at home and keep house. She has a right to pursue a career and in many cases can earn far more than her husband, who can now be termed a house husband, if they decide she will be the breadwinner. She doesn't even need a man to produce children. She can be artificially inseminated in the privacy of her own apartment and raise her offspring without any male help. She can take a pill to allow her to be as promiscuous as she wants without the fear of becoming pregnant. But if things do go amiss, she also has the right to abort up to a very late stage in her pregnancy any unwanted child she's carrying in her womb. She doesn't need to confine her relationships to males. She can be as free and abandoned as she wishes. And the age we live in sees this as progress and enlightenment. God help us. Please, God, help us. Romans 12 starts off by saying, this is Paul talking, I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. And don't be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. Again, I say there is no reason why any woman would want to be a submissive, obedient wife, unless she wants to become part of the bride of Christ, to please and serve God and to be a follower of Jesus Christ. In other words, unless she wants to be a real Christian. And if she really wants to be a Christian, she'll have to have her mind renewed so that she doesn't think like the world. Some years before I was married, Morris and I had been invited to minister at a church in Scotland. Actually, on the particular Sunday morning we had been booked, they were also holding a wedding ceremony. The bride and groom were strong Christians, But because they both had so many non-Christian family members, they decided to get married on a Sunday morning and incorporate their wedding into the normal service so that their relations could be part of an actual church service. Not a bad way to witness. The service progressed in the usual way. There was a time of praise and worship. I sang and Morris preached, but it was the words of the minister that struck me as he spoke during the marriage ceremony. He looked directly at the groom and charged him with his duties as the head of his house. He told him in no uncertain terms that God had placed in his hands a bud, meaning his wife, and it was up to him how she developed from now onwards. He could stifle her and leave her to all the elements, or he could protect and nurture her to enable her to become a beautiful flower. He said that it was within the power of the groom to bring out the full potential of that flower if he cultivated and cherished it. I was really touched because I could see that the marriage partnership meant that you didn't have to battle through life with all its difficulties on your own. You could help each other and do it together. Of course, not every woman is the same. Sometimes no amount of love, tenderness and consideration can sort out a bad seed. The Bible gives accounts of women who belittled their husbands, brought down their families and corrupted countries. Queen Vashti, a classic example, was dethroned and divorced by her admiring husband because, as king, he could not tolerate her public scorn and ridicule. God does not approve of divorce. Jesus said it was only allowed by God because of the hardness of men's hearts. Yet God himself divorced Israel for their constant spiritual adultery. If a man has a wife who is rebellious, hard-hearted, stubborn, and refuses to work alongside him, he will need to seek God how to handle this situation. Revelation 2 verse 20 said, "Notwithstanding, I have a few things against thee, because you suffered that woman Jezebel." This type of woman, although unwelcome, was permitted to remain in the church, but it made God very angry. So what is this type of woman doing in your home? So men, husbands, help your wives. You've been placed in a position of authority in your home, and there are things you can do which will help and encourage your wife to be someone you can be proud of. Remember, Proverbs 12 verse 4 says, "A virtuous woman is a crown to her husband." In the following chapters of this book, I propose to examine some of the virtues a woman generally looks for in her man. I'm sure you will find that adopting these qualities will benefit you in nurturing the precious bud God has given to you, which in turn will enrich your marriage and work towards bringing about the mutual relationship you both desire.